All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager. Today is Friday, October 7th, and welcome to our latest edition. We've missed you. It's been a few months that we've been able to get together because of conflict of schedules, and most importantly, this room that we're in today at the police facility is a very, very busy room. So we booked it out through the rest of the year, so we'll be back on track going forward. But it's good to see everyone, and welcome to our City Manager.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you.
So we have a lot to talk about since last time we met. So we'll start with some things that might be old news, then we'll go into things that might be new news, and then we'll answer any questions about anything we talked about or anything that might be on your mind otherwise. So we had an election. Our primary election was on August 2nd. The municipal election was to elect 3 council members and the office of the mayor. All 3 of the incumbent council members were elected in the primary on August 2nd, and I was reelected as mayor on the primary on August 2nd. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so you will not see us on the general election. There still is a general election occurring. So please exercise your right to vote. You'll have offices for statewide offices, and some of our federal offices as well will be on there. But you will not see any of the municipal or the local candidates because they were all elected during the primary process. So we haven't had time to talk about that, but I wanted to just to explain that, because as you're starting to get all of the voter pamphlets and all the information that's coming in the mail now, you're going to see absent anything local and might wonder why that's occurring, and that's the reason. So we also have had a lot of discussions about water. Water's been on the top of many people's minds. Most noticeably, every August of each year is when the Bureau of Reclamation makes an announcement based on water and what's going to happen within the water year. So that's how they determine that, and they have declared a drought to a drought for this next year. What that has done is it sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of comments. Actually, on the national level, they've been having a conversation since May about water, what the water looks like, and all of those components. And I just want to give you a brief overview because it's very, very complex. The water law, law of the river, as they call it, the allocations, it's very complex, and it's very, it's big. And so I'll give you the perspective from Lake Havasu, and then Jess will talk a little bit about what that means for us. But the good news is Lake Havasu City has been very forward-thinking when it comes to water for many, many decades. So we have secured water entitlements for full build-out of our community. And full build-out is known in Lake Havasu City because we are surrounded by state trust lands and or federal wildlife refuge land. And so we know where we can grow, and we know what our water service district is. So councils long before us really were very forward-thinking in securing those water rights. These are rights that we paid for as taxpayers and ratepayers to the system. We paid for those water rights, and we have that entitlement. Now, entitlement is different than allocation. Each year, Jess and his team have to order water. It sounds, pretty elementary, but we order the amount of water we think we're going to use in that water year. So our total allocation, what we've paid for, is 28,000 acre feet or so, and that gives us enough water for about 100,000 permanent residents. Now, what we order, so our order for this next year is about 13,000 acre feet, because that's about what we use on an annual basis. Lake Havasu City and actually the state of Arizona is using less water today than we did in the 1990s, with a considerable amount of growth that has occurred in the meantime. So the practices that this council and councils before us and the team at the city have done when it comes to water conservation and water reuse programs have been very, very effective. That doesn't mean that we're done. We still have to have the conversation. But what I have realized, and what I think is the most notable of all of this, is that people are finally talking about it. So before, it was just us talking about it at the local level. We were fighting water transfers. We were talking about what our allocation was. How do we protect that? How do we ensure the future and water futures for our region? And what does that all look like? But the folks that rely on the Colorado River are 7 basin states and Mexico. And through a series of complex laws and international treaties that make all of these things happen, we need everybody at the table having this discussion. So the conversation you're hearing in the news and in the comments, that's a good thing. We want people to be on board with that. So we have the lower basin states, which you may hear about quite often, which is Arizona, Nevada, California. And then you have the upper basin states, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. So there's differences of need and uses and what that looks like. Now, what can be alarming is when you see on the news Lake Mead or Lake Powell, and you see these launch ramps that are on dry land or some of those areas, immediately we get concerns of what's that going to look like for Lake Havasu. I'm confident to say that's not going to happen in Lake Havasu because of the way that the system works. So we're more of a holding lake, and those are reservoirs that work within the system on how they deliver water throughout that. And there are straws at the south end of our lake. So down at the Parker Dam, one going to Southern California and one going through the canal system to Central Arizona through the Central Arizona Project. There's about 30 million or so people below us that are relying on that water delivery. So they need that water in the basin to stay within Lake Havasu City. So our water levels don't really fluctuate more than 10 inches in a year. And a lot of it's based on delivery from the Bureau of Reclamation and what their allocations for water delivery and needs downstream look like. So I don't want to paint a rosy picture that we're not in a mega drought, because we are, but we've planned for it. So we know what this looks like, and barring any hydrology changes, which there have been some hydrology changes and the modeling and what that looks like, we're in a good position. We have a seat at the table. We'll continue to ensure that we're at the table advocating for our water futures and those types of things. So sometimes the conversation after we hear all of these things goes to, well, we don't have enough water, we need to stop building. And we shouldn't allow anyone else to build within our community, which I can see how we can draw that conclusion pretty quickly. You hear there's no water, and then you see somebody building on a lot next door and what that might look like. But again, Lake Havasu City planned for this, and we have water allocations and entitlements to absorb the growth that we're having. And so if we were to not allow any more building or stop building throughout our community, all that's going to do is leave the excess water that we as ratepayers or taxpayers already paid for to go down system and allow those communities to grow and continue to build housing and other things for them. For us to have a sustainable future within our community, we need to continue to have that cycle moving with smart growth practices. I mean, so not just allowing anything to happen anywhere, but smart practices that allow us to still manage the natural resource that we have, but also allow the services and the needs of our citizens to be met. So obviously doctors, teachers, grocery store attendants, restaurant folks, all of those types of things are really important, and those would not occur if we just stopped building today. So I think I hit a multiple area of levels. Just I don't know if you have anything else to add when it comes to what we've done from a city's perspective and what we're continuing to do with water conservation.
Yeah, it covered quite a bit.
Yes.
And that's the kind of the important takeaway there too, is that we have nearly 29,000 acre feet, 28,000 and change acre feet of that's our allotment that we get, and we're using less than 14,000 acre feet per year. So that's an important aspect in terms of the water rights that the city has purchased over the last several decades. Though that's that's cash that Havasu City has paid for these entitlements over the last several decades. And so that's important that we've been forward thinking, and then thankful for the city, the history in the city, including the government, but also for our residents. We're using less water per capita than almost every other city in Arizona, and that's really important. We go back to the 90s, that we're using the same amount of water total in the 90s that we are today.
I have a question from that.
Sure.
Yeah. We moved here in the 90s, and the build out at the time was 80,000. And that was in consideration for our water, our traffic, and that we help California as far as water goes. True?
No, so
That doesn't happen anymore?
yeah. So I'll recap the question real quick, and then we'll take all questions at the end, just because there's microphones and folks at home.
Because my husband came to one meeting with me and went, "What about this?" was, and what about?
Yeah, we'll
Yes,
take that
the-
question about the recording. No one's hearing. I mean, the room's hearing it perfectly, but on the recording,
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
yeah.
So we'll recap that real quick. So when it comes to back in the 90s, there was the build out looked like 80,000 people is what Sandy is mentioning. In that time, we have annexed additional land. So all of the area out by the mall has been annexed into our community. And so some annexation increased that to about 100,000 people. And the law of the river has not changed since the 90s. The law of the river dates back all the way back to the 1930s during the construction of the Parker Dam. But we'll expand on any additional questions at the end of our program.
To touch on a couple of things, because you hear like concerns in terms of what is that the levels that Mead and Powell mean for Havasu. You talked about new growth, new construction, and what does that mean? We also hear conversations about how it's tied to electrical power, and with the levels of Mead and Powell are diminished, that it's going to somehow impact the ability for us to provide electricity here in Lake Havasu City. None of the power that we receive in Lake Havasu City is tied to any of the hydrology or any of the systems that generate power from those areas. So that's very important. They're not connected in any way. So. And the other one I hear quite a bit about is just from a recreation standpoint, the levels on our lake or on the lower Colorado River, and how is that going to be impacted based on the levels of Mead and Powell. Mayor, you indicated that 30 million people rely on water below us. So those levels at the lake have to remain at the level that they are right now. So people in central Arizona, Southern California get their water that they're according to the compacts and agreements over the last many decades, they have their entitlements that are there. So we're not concerned about the depth of the water and the recreation that's tied to what we be able to enjoy today.
And so the next conversation we'll have locally is we will have a conversation at the council about our water conservation plan. So that'll be coming forward, just basic principles of water conservation, just so it's top of mind awareness. We can review that with the citizens. It's already on our website. So if you have an interest now to take a look at it, feel free to do so. But we also will be reviewing our water and our utility rates going forward. Last year, right around this time, we were having a utility rate study identifying how the rate structure should be set in light of the expiring irrigation and drainage district tax, which was about $5.7 million. It contributed to our water system. How are we going to make up that difference? And so in October of last year, we had a hearing at the council. We adopted a rate structure that we said we would come back in 1 year because there's seasonality built into our water use based on the influx of winter residents, I'll call them. So they are visitors potentially, but they own a home here. Our summer residents that own a home here as well. And then the visitation fluctuation that we have. We have seasonality in the way we deliver water and the way that we use water. And so once we have that modeled out, we're going to come back before council and take a look at the rate strategy. The reason I bring this up right now is one, it's forward coming. So when you see it in the news, you at least have an understanding of what that is and why we're doing it. But also there are some strategies that you can build into rates that help conserve water. And that was one of the reasons that we didn't give enough credit to the citizens and the ratepayers on why we're using less water today than we were in the 90s, is because the rate structures of previous ratepayers were based on water usage. So you might have remembered the winter quarterly averaging, very complex and hard to figure out. But once you figure it out, it set your rate structure, but it preserved conservation or encouraged conservation. So that'll be forward coming. But again, not a rosy picture on water, but that we have control of water. We understand it. We're at the table and we're talking about what that looks like. Another item that we've been working on, and we had the first introduction of an ordinance at our last council meeting, and we'll be addressing it at our council meeting this coming Tuesday, is a nuisance ordinance or taking a look at our code enforcement and what that looks like. The current council during the last year during planning, we gave direction to the staff, so Jess and his team, to take a look at what code enforcement looks like and what are the biggest complaints that we get from our citizens. And as we're growing, we have infill, meaning that people are living closer to each other than they did previously. You might have had 2 or 3 or 4 vacant lots between your neighbors, and now that's not really the occurrence anymore. And so we're getting some complaints we're getting a lot of complaints on junk vehicles and the like, and so we want to see what that looked like. So the council gave Jess and his team more support through the budget to increase code enforcement, and also direction to go look at the code and see what we're doing in practice. Is it mirroring the code? And are there any tweaks or changes to the code that we could make that would address the majority of the code enforcement complaints that we receive? So Jess, you want to talk a little bit about what you and your team did with that information from the council and how that looks like going forward?
Yeah, we've been talking about code enforcement in Lake Havasu City for quite some time, and I suspect we'll continue to talk about that on an ongoing basis. It's one of those things that impacts all of our residents, and what's happening in the neighborhood and what's happening on the lots and the properties that are right next door to our residents is vitally important. Council has charged myself and my team to. What are we going to do to make sure that there's clarity and transparency and a sense of fairness that's tied to our process? We've talked in the past many times about the difference in philosophy in code enforcement. Some cities will have a proactive code enforcement operation, which means that they have several code enforcement officers that are driving the streets, and if they see something that's out of compliance, they're going to pull over, stop, and engage that homeowner and start that process. Some cities, like Lake Havasu City, were reactive. So we rely on our residents to share their concerns with the city, and then our code enforcement officers will react to those concerns. And so it's important to understand that. We've had, for several years now, we've had one code enforcement officer. Denise Abel works for Lake Havasu City, and she's fantastic, and she's done a really good job. I think last year we heard all by herself she was doing 700 some cases per year, and where people making contact. And that's just the ones that she logged into the system. There's other calls where if she was able to receive a complaint, make a phone call, make quick contact, and it was resolved right then and there. She didn't even enter that into the system. So that's 700 plus all the things that happened on a daily basis. And so that she's handling the residential, she's handling the commercial side of things, all those types of things. Again, council says, Jess, let's look at room for improvement. So in that time frame, we've just hired another resident. We hired another employee, and we now have two people that are staff in the code enforcement. And
she's a resident too.
Yeah, she is. She's
a resident. Yeah,
she is a resident. Lauren Allison is her name, and she's doing great things working with Denise already. And we're providing more resources for Denise and for Lauren to respond to the concerns that are out there. And then in addition to that, we wanted to take a fresh look at the nuisance chapter within the city code. This is the chapter that when our code enforcement officers go out into the community, are going to look at this and say, okay, what is in compliance and what is not? What's legal and what's illegal, and what do we need to address? Is that from a landscaping perspective, from a vehicle perspective, from just trash and other aesthetic issues, down to health and safety issues that might cause fire, might attract rodents and other things of that nature. So in the past practice, if you had a junk vehicle in your front yard, or a vehicle that's not running, that's not operable, the Lake Havasu City would allow that resident to put a tarp or a cover on top of that vehicle. And then that vehicle would no longer be considered a junk vehicle. It would magically disappear, even though we can all see it. So that the verbiage that the council has been introduced to council, and council will be deciding on whether to adopt or otherwise on Tuesday's council meeting, would be that we're limiting the number of junk vehicles, and we're further defining what a junk vehicle is. So if you have a vehicle that's parked in your front yard, it's got to be roadworthy. If it's a boat, it's got to be waterworthy. Obviously, it's got to be registered with the state of Arizona, like all of our vehicles are, and it's got to be properly insured. And if those three things, if you meet those three indicators, then it's not defined as a junk vehicle. And as we talk about what a junk vehicle is and what the nuisance chapter does, I think it's important to also talk about what it isn't. We're not talking about limiting the number of operable vehicles that are parked at a property, or an RV or a boat or any of those types of things. That's not part of this particular discussion. So, but we are limiting the number of junk vehicles. We're defining them and then limiting them in a way that they cannot be visible from the right of way. So if you're walking on the street or in a cul-de-sac area or whatever else too, those junk vehicles cannot be visible from the right of way. So you can have them. but can't be visible. You can put them in your backyard if they're covered and screened, and you can have a maximum of 200 square feet of junk vehicles. Anything that exceeds that 200 square feet indicator, then kind of triggers that would be have to be zoned as a junkyard or ability to have a junkyard on that property. So 200 square feet in the backyard, properly covered, nothing that's visible from the street. So that's the approach that the city is going to be taking if council adopts the changes to the code on Tuesday night. About 35 or 40% of all of the calls that come into code enforcement are related to junk vehicles. So it's a big effort. So.
And so with the direction that the council's had is we'll stay reactive, and we just want to move the needle to address the largest number of concerns that we're seeing, see how that looks and how that plays out in the neighborhoods, and see if there's a lessening of calls and a peaceful coexistence. So we're trying to find how do we allow neighbors to be neighbors without over-regulating it, but also having guidelines in place to allow for that peaceful enjoyment of your property. So good work on that. Jess, you and your team have worked really hard on that over the last year. Council adopts the introduction, and then on Tuesday we'll have a further discussion about possible adoption. The next item is the courthouse. We are getting very, very close on the courthouse. So just by way of history, since it's been a few months since we've been together, the courthouse is currently, we're in the same facility as the Justice Court and the Superior Court and the Municipal Court. For many, many years, we had a consolidated court fashion, which worked okay in our region. It worked good because we were a growing area that had small amounts of cases that allowed us to coexist in the same facility. But in 2019 or 18? 2009, we've been doing this for a long time now. So
I honestly don't know.
We deconsolidated in place, which basically the presiding judge at the time had asked us to find a different spot. We didn't have enough room in the courthouse to have all three of those courts operating in full fashion. And so we looked at a variety of different measures. We looked at expanding the current county facility over on College Drive, going either up or out. There's not a lot of room to go out. At that time, there was a lot of large commercial vacant spaces. We looked at maybe leasing one of those. Those are no longer an option and weren't well into 2020. And then we also looked at building a new building here on this complex at City Hall. We looked at all those different opportunities, and we were doing this it must have been 2019, because it was 2020 that we were looking at what we were going to do. We had a real brief analysis done by some architects on what the cost might be to build here on this complex fresh. And this is, again, early 2020. So this is prior to pandemic-related cost increases, the inflation, the supply chain issues, all before all of that. The estimates were right around 12 million?
12 million.
To build new construction here. An
opportunity, on land that we already own.
Land we already own. So it's the land right here. It would be 12 million just for the construction costs. And by this time, the vacant large retail spaces have been leased up as this is going along. We looked at purchasing adjacent properties to City Hall. And then we had an opportunity when Jack and Dale Bailey decided to retire with Havasu Fitness when they were looking to sell their facility. So we were able to buy the facility, which is adjacent to City Hall complex. It already has a sidewalk that connects this parking lot that we're in to theirs. And it made a lot of sense to purchase that. So we purchased that building with cash for $3 million because we've been planning for a capital investment for the courts. And so we purchased that. We own that building free and clear. And then Justin and his team have been working with our Judge Kalali, and his team to come together and see what the needs of the court were and what that looks like. Now, while all of this is happening, at the same time, the council adopted a resolution supporting treatment courts or specialty courts. And so we already have an award-winning Veterans Treatment Court, which is amazing. Just to give quick numbers on it, there's the recidivism rate, which is the rate at which people that go into the court system reoffend and have to go back in the court system. And the general court system population is about 85%. So 85% of the folks that go into the system will continue to stay in that system and in that cycle. The treatment court, it's under 9% recidivism rate. So what does that mean to us? One, it's a huge difference, which is fantastic. We're really repairing lives within our community, but it also reduces the cost of services that we as taxpayers pay for. So someone doesn't just go to court on their own. They first have to be encountered by one of our police officers. They have to be arrested. They have to potentially be housed in our jail. They have to then have our prosecutor's office do the prosecution. They then potentially have to have a public defender paid for by the taxpayers to defend them, and all of the things that go in between of that. So with the council adopting that resolution of support, it now gives Judge Clowley and his team the opportunity to expand some of our treatment courts and really identify some areas of need. So the first area that we will look at is a cohort court, which generally people that go into the system, I'm told, go in for one reason, but there might be another reason that drew it. So maybe substance abuse, and they're in for domestic violence, or maybe a DUI and it's substance abuse. And so how do you get to what that looks like? But treatment courts take a little bit more time and a little bit more space. And so we could not do that in our current facility, but we can do it in the new facility that's being planned. So we're getting very, very close. We've taken a very slow approach to this for a couple of reasons. We wanted to, one, be very transparent and very open about what it is we're doing, and we wanted to get it right the first time. And so we started going down the process. And then we realized that it might be a good idea to bring a contractor on board at the design phase, so that we didn't go all the way through design and then a contractor came in and said, well, if you would have just put this wall here, you wouldn't have had to spend all this money to move the plumbing here. And so Jess and his team did that, and it's yielded fantastic results. And so council's had many, many public hearings about this coming forward. Right now, we think it's the second meeting of October.
We're a very, very good chance that'll be on the 25th, I think is October 25th, which is our second meeting of this month. It's already October.
Yes.
So that the construction contract would be before council on that date. There's a slight chance as we work through some of the last minute details, might get pushed to that first meeting of November, but the all signs point right now that'll be on the 25th.
Yeah, so the new courthouse, as it's designed, will have two courtrooms. It'll have hearing rooms, jury rooms, all the things that you need to support a courthouse and a court operation, and allow us to expand those treatment courts, which again is fantastic news for our citizens that find themselves in this position. Now, it's also important to note that folks that use our court system are not just people that might have committed a crime or offended somehow. There's also people that we do orders of protection, we do marriages, and there's lots of things that happen in a courthouse beyond just that. So
victim advocacy is tied to our courthouse operations?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, so there's lots of good things happen within that courthouse. It's going to be really good to have one adjacent to us. Right now, the council direction at our last hearing was to spend between $8 and $9 million. I know $1 million is a huge variance, but stay tuned to our meeting on October 25th to learn what those costs look like. But still going into this process of building brand new, prior to the pandemic challenges that occurred with cost increases and the such, we still will be able to have a court facility adjacent to City Hall complex for a price that will be less than what that original estimate was there, which I think is good news. The courthouse facility also, as currently designed, obviously council still has to weigh in and have the discussion, but the last hearing we had at the council is there's a community room upstairs that will allow us more flexibility to have meetings, boards, committees, commission meetings, coffees, those types of things. Some of the reason why we haven't had coffee the last couple of months is this room was too busy, and we're temporarily using this meeting room that the chief and his team use to do training. So, which we're fine to share, but sometimes if there's not enough room for us all, we need more room so that we can share. So, but we'll have those discussions on October 25th on what that looks like.
And Ken, just in terms of the courthouse, you talked a lot about the needs that we have and how they're growing. The county's needs at their existing courthouse are also growing. So I think remember now it's 2019. I think I got an email on April 1st of 2019. It wasn't April Fool. It was about some of the conversations that need to take place for deconsolidation to occur. So it's been several years since this conversation started. In the meantime, I can tell you that we love the county, and the county's been a great partner. They've been a great landlord at the existing courthouse on College Street, but they're growing very weary of us in that facility. The maximum that they've identified us for a lease, if you will, is August of next year. And then we've asked them if we can go month to month after that in hopes that the courthouse will be completed in the first quarter of 2024. So they're gently pushing us out the door. In the meantime, the volume of work that's occurring there is increasing. I'm talking to Judge Kalali, and he's sharing with me that we're actually getting less hours in the courtrooms in the space right now than we have in the past, and they're pushing us for diminish. We need more, and we're receiving less. Again, that's not a criticism for the county. They have needs, and it is their building. So we're working hard on that too. We want to make sure that the building is functional. We want to make sure it's a building that we're proud of. But we need a lot of common sense injected into this process from a fiscal perspective. We're not going to be wasting money on this project and making sure that we've done an appropriate analysis when it comes to that design. I've tasked our project managers to go look at other similar projects in the state for courthouse constructions or renovations that are similar. Of the 8 or so that I think that came back, we were on the bottom end of the cost per square footage of what that cost. So that was kind of a barometer to make sure that we are going down the right path from what that looks like. We can house a courthouse operations that allows us for the specialty courts, and we can do so from a fiscal responsible perspective.
And as Jess was saying, when they did that analysis of other courthouses around the state that have been built and were coming in less per square foot than those, it's considerably less. I think the step of bringing in the contractor, which Jess and his team brought to council, was key for this. The best news about this whole thing that we haven't talked about is we talked about how much it costs, but we have the money. So because it's taken so long, we've been planning for it. We have the money in the bank. And so we don't need to take out loans or do any bond financing.
No debt.
We'll be paying cash for it because we planned for it. It's in the current budget this year to be able to do so. So lots of good things moving in that courthouse. And as our community continues to grow, the courthouse will be able to serve those needs of our community, our growing community. So the next item we want to talk about is the Downtown Catalyst project. It was in the front page of the news today. Parks and Rec Advisory Board met last week to get an update on the Downtown Catalyst project. And what that looks like, again, this is a long time project in the making as well. This started all the way back during the America's Best Community competition, where Lake Havasu City was a $2 million grand prize winner in that competition. And it was based on our Vision 2020 economic development plan for a change on 5 key elements. And so it was economic development and job creation, education, tourism and talent supply, water, and community engagement. So those 5 pillars of change allowed us to be the $2 million grand prize winner. Those money is going into 3 key projects. One is the co-work location, which is basically an incubator space where businesses go to grow and hopefully foster and move into their own facilities. And the second was the Downtown Catalyst project. And the third was an environmental learning center. And so the ones that are moving in a direction is the co-work location that you're actually starting to see some visual pieces of that in our downtown, right behind Hawkins Sanchez jewelry store. There's a building that's going up right now. They're hopeful to have that done towards the end of the year, first quarter of next year. Again, that's an incubator space where businesses go in. Maybe it's you might be working in your garage right now, tinkering and creating the world's next greatest whatever, and now you need to go to the next stage and continue to grow from there. So that's moving forward. The second one is the Downtown Catalyst project, which is what was in the news this morning, and then the Environmental Learning Center is there's plans that are being discussed and things going, but not moving at the same pace as the others. So Downtown Catalyst, what the intent of it was really to be a catalyst to redo your downtown. And what does that look like? So those of you that have lived in Lake Havasu City for 10 years or more know that McCulloch looks a whole lot different than it did today. It looks a whole lot different today than it did 10 years ago. What does that mean is now it's more of a walkable downtown. There's actually things that you can go to. Prior to that, you would literally, if you had 2 or 3 stops on McCulloch, you would get in your car, go in front of that store, do your business there, get back in your car, go up or down the road, a few more spots, park your car, go in, do your business, get back in your car, and then go up or down the road and park in front of the next store and do your business. You don't have to do that anymore. Now you can walk up and down the area, especially from Smoke Tree up to about the Pima Wash area is very walkable. And then you can see a transition move to the more professional office related activities as you move up in the upper McCulloch area. That's a transition of a downtown. And how do those things happen? It doesn't just organically happen. Those are done by planners and civic engagement, which occurred in Lake Havasu City on multiple fronts. The first movement was back in 2007 with a RUDAT study. RUDAT is the Rural Urban Association of Architects come in, the American Association of Architects, or Institute of Architects come in and bring experts from all over the country, and they spend about 5 days planning a community. Tons of community engagement, breakout sessions, all over the city. It was quite an amazing to see. Some of the results of what that might look like, just so you can get a perspective of how big this can be, is downtown Phoenix in the 70s. It was not a place you wanted to go. If you went, you certainly went during the daytime hours. But now the downtown area, because of what a RUDAT study did down there, is what you're envisioning, or what you see. The light rail, the sports stadiums, the business development you have down there, ASU campus that you have down there, the convention center you have down there, that all happened because of the RUDAT study. So these aren't studies that you do and then tomorrow you see the results. These are studies that you do and then they take decades to come to fruition. And downtown Phoenix is still continuing to see their revamp. So when our RUDAT came, we have some things that have already occurred. Just that transition I talked about of what the Main Street downtown area looks like just in 10 years versus then to today is already occurring. This Catalyst project was to help spur that. So it was identified as what would be a public-private partnership, meaning that we would sell off a portion of the lot that we own at Querio and McCulloch for private development of some sort. And that was, the intent was high density uses like coffee shops, eateries, things that really brought people moving around a downtown area. And then adjacent to that would be a large public open space. And so we looked at a variety of iterations of what that looked like. And there were some really cool things that came out of it. The problem is that they were all partners with public people. And that was not the agreement with the citizens when we went to work on this. So, and what do I mean by public? One iteration was that ASU would go down there. ASU, great institution, but it's paid for by taxpayers, so that's public. There was another iteration that another government agency would move down there, and again, whether it's local dollars or not, it's still taxpayer dollars. So that was not part of the deal. So we put the brakes on that. We said, hey, let's look at a couple of different things. And none of those things really came together. So in, I believe, 2020, we went and said, hey, let's take a look and see. We have the $1 million in the bank. What can we do to make that area still be a catalyst, but usable for our citizens and uses that they want? And uses that they want, we didn't really know what it would be. And so, obviously we know what it's been used for. It's a grass lot that people do art fairs and events and gatherings and those types of things, but usually event-based. It's really rare that you go down there and see citizens just mulling around that lot unless there's an activity happening there. You might sometimes see a hot air balloon go there, or maybe a resident throwing a Frisbee to a dog, but very rarely do you see somebody using it. So we thought, let's go out to the citizens and see what and how and what would they do with this. And so this is probably the largest citizen engagement project that we've ever done because I think it's, 32 public meetings?
Probably all together, because it's a standing item on the Parks and Recreation Board that meets each and every month to have conversations, get updates, and solicit public comment. Yeah.
Yeah, so a huge public comment. So now we're getting to the point where the designs are at the 90% area, and so it's going to come back to council for consideration and award for what our appetite is. So we have the $1 million that we won. Those monies are free and clear. We won those monies. They're not taxpayer dollars. We've already spent about 180 on the design phase and what that looks like. And then what's the council's appetite going forward based on designs that the Parks and Rec Board and our citizens have participated in designing. And so it's quite complex on the things. I was actually surprised by it too. There's some unique architectural features of the area. And when you actually get down to it, if you just look at it as a layperson or someone that's just like looking at the design, you're like, what is that? That seems kind of strange. One, because it's different than what it is today, which totally understand. And then two, it's taking into account, they went and measured the way that the sun sets on that area and how it rises by season and time to ensure that there's the right covering of shade to maximize shade coverage. pretty complex. I mean, I would never have really thought that through. There's some round sidewalk areas that include areas for ingress and egress on events, so that folks in wheelchairs and strollers and people carrying their dollies to put their wares that they might sell in their fairs together. So lots of complex things have went into this. So we'll see where the council's appetite is on what that looks like. But that was what the intent of the Downtown Catalyst was. That's how we won the money. That was the viewpoint of the citizens based on the meetings that I've attended and watched online that have talked about this project. It seems that the vision's not much different from back when we won the money till today. As far as uses and what that looks like. So I think that's good as a community. It shows that there's sustainability and a future for some sort of a gathering space in that area. I don't know if you have anything else to add just to the kind of the process on what that looked like.
Yeah, no, we're right on the verge of the 90% design. And then once we get that 90% design, it'll be bringing before council. At that point, it won't be for action initially. We need to get more comment. Mm-hmm. And so we'll be presenting that 90% design to council, engaging our residents, from my perspective, engaging the council on are we going in the right direction? What kind of tweaks do we want to make before we get to that 100%? And then being able to then bid that project out to a contractor that would come in and take care of that. The goal or the intention of the big picture of what we were charged with from council direction was to create a public gathering space that works for the existing special events that take place out there right now. For the existing special events, we have about 15 events per year that utilize that space for craft shows or farmers markets or different events that take place there throughout the year. So the goal, the intent there is to enhance that space to create an environment that's better for those events, including the grading and the turf, walkability, making sure that there's power outlets available for each of these booths and vendors, so that the loud generators aren't needed any longer. A stage area, some restrooms. So those are, and then some shade in that area. So that's taking all of that direction and then trying to put it on paper is the task at hand right now, and hoping to have that 90% presentation to council. Either first meeting in December, probably one of the first meetings or one of the meetings in January is that general time frame. We'll present that and get a clear indication of where we're going to go next.
Perfect. So now we'll talk about signs. There were signs everywhere. Were signs during the campaign, right? Yeah, throughout the whole community, we had signs that were everywhere. We got a ton of complaints from citizens about where they were, why they were allowed there, what can you do about it, all of those types of things. And so we are going to take a look at the political sign ordinance and what that looks like. And we're also, while we do it, we're going to take a look at the electronic signs. So we're seeing an influx or an abundance of new signs transferring out that were once static signs into moving signs that are LED in nature, and what that looks like. So Jessica, if you want to talk about what you and your team are doing on that front based on a council request item to address those types of concerns going forward.
So two different conversations, or we can probably break it into a couple subcategories as well too. But on the onset, we're talking about lighted signs, and then the concern there is the size and use of lighted signs, particularly on Highway 95, right? So businesses want to put up large lighted signs. They want to get your attention. They want you to pull in. They want you to shop. They want to utilize their services. From the concern on the public safety side is that we don't want our motorists on 95 staring at that sign and crashing into the vehicle that's right in front of them. So that there is, we're trying to find a happy medium in terms of what that looks like, so that the businesses can promote themselves on 95, but do so in a safe manner. So the two areas of what we're looking at there is trying to limit the size of these lighted signs. So if you look at like Paradise Auto, the old Cowboy RV, Bradley Chevrolet, there's several on 95. The proposal right now that went before the Planning and Zoning Commission this week, and will be coming before council, I believe the second meeting in October. We'll talk about courthouse, we'll talk about signs and all these things all at one large meeting. There's more on there too. Will be I think it's the 32 square feet is the coverage of what that maximum size would be for a lighted sign. and then some conversations in there too about making sure that the lighted sign itself isn't flashing and displaying and having a bunch of distractions that are occurring. It's got to be like a static display. So I think it's 8 seconds is the recommendation coming right now based on our team's analysis. So you can put up a display and say, hey, this is happening, whatever else too, and you can take that down and put every 8 seconds and put another piece of information up there. So much less distracting for the motorists. So that'll be coming before council, and at the same time, we'll also be talking about political signage and making sure that we've identified and captured all of the needs. We're just coming through a election season, local, state, and federal, and we've seen signs everywhere. Everybody in the community is talking about these signs are everywhere and they're properly placed and this and all the chaos. Through this whole entire process, we received officially, because again, our code enforcement is reactive. We officially received a grand total of 1 complaint. So when you go through the proper channels and contact code enforcement, they went out there and made contact with the candidate that was running for that particular office with that placement of that particular sign, and it was resolved immediately. But maybe council, maybe the community wants the council to be a little more proactive in terms of where these signs are placed, making sure they're not on in public areas, maybe the wash railings and other areas that may exist. We also have our the district that we have where no political signs are allowed whatsoever, so we're looking at all those types of things to make sure that the language in the code is reflective of the community, is adopted by council, and that the staff has the ability to enforce whatever those words mean. Mm-hmm. So we want to be proactive with political signs. That's a conversation we can have. We want to be reactive and wait for complaints generated by the public. All those things will be considered.
Yeah, part of it, when it comes to the political signs, the code already addresses it. There's a zone that you're not allowed to put signs in without private property owner permission. Basically, the downtown area, like Havasu Avenue, the resort area, they call it along the hotels and the hotel row over on London Bridge Road. But that wasn't being met during this last campaign. And so there was folks that were talking about what that looks like. So the code's already there. So part of what we do sometimes is just, hey, this is the code, and this is what it is. And how do we come into compliance, and what type of compliance measures do you have? So we'll have those conversations and get those addressed going forward. We have some good news on roads. We have a lot of different things going on roads. We get a lot of complaints about roads and the condition of our roads and the like. Generally, it's because you drove on like Havasu Avenue over on Acoma and Industrial. But that we know that's coming. That's a fix. We had a water main break in that area in the spring. And when that occurred, we had to obviously replace the piping. We ordered the piping, and it's not going to arrive until this month, until October. And so we could have paved that road for a 3-month period and spent taxpayer dollars to do so. Or we could put up with it for 3 months and put those obnoxious signs up that say, hey, be slow and use caution in this area, which is what we chose to do to be fiscally conservative on the spending of those dollars. So when that pipe arrives this month, we'll fix the water main, and then we will repave that entire road, and it will no longer be the mess that it is today. So, but beyond that, we have other road issues that are occurring as well. One is Highway 95, which is not something that Lake Havasu City has the ability to do because we don't own it, or the money to do. But with the great leadership of Representative Biasucci and Representative Cobb out of Kingman, they led the way in the House to get money allocated for Highway 95. They did that 2 years ago. And when we got with ADOT to then talk about how it's going to work and let's do it, they said it's not enough money and that it was going to need about $10 million more. And we're like, yeah, that's we need that money to do it, because what they were going to do is what they call curb to curb. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so curb to curb, I guess they just come lay asphalt down along the road and they don't go into the rights of way.
Crosswalk area, or they were going to touch any of that.
Yeah, mostly if you go to any of our intersections along Highway 95, there's like a 10-foot stretch that looks like pebbles. That's because they didn't do it last time when they did this about 25 years ago. And so we thought, yeah, that can't happen. We need to have this done correctly. So they went to bat again this legislative session for us and got the additional money allocated to do the entire roadway from Sarah Park all the way up to I-40 in our neighborhood. But they didn't stop there. They also took care of our friends up in Bullhead City and got 95 money allocations for that as well. So that is going to be coming forward. It's so exciting, and so remember this high of excitement you have right now, because
don't forget it.
When it comes to construction, it's going to be a nightmare, and so we understand that. Have patience, road work is never any fun, but it's going to be a really great improvement for Highway 95.
Does anybody remember how long it
And in addition, no one can hear. But and in addition to 95, the city is also working on some light technology to ensure that when you come off of the highway, that our lights are synchronized with the city lights. So currently, the highway has its own light system. The city has its own light system. But if you're going to come off, I'll just pick a road, come off of the highway on Mesquite, taking a left going up Mesquite, and then all to find yourself at another stop sign sitting on that hill. So what we want is when you have that green light off of the highway up on Mesquite, that the light at Lake Havasu Avenue is also green, so you can traverse your way through our community. Hopefully that will slow people down and give them some more patience in the world so that they're not so aggressive on those roads. So we're going to be doing that, but that's not all. We have more. So we also have money allocated in the budget to do additional roadway projects to the tune of about $10 million throughout the community to really address some of our key areas. And that's where I'll turn it over to you, Jess, on what you and your team are doing to identify those and when we'll start seeing some of that.
Yeah, so we've seen in the last several years an influx of tourism in the community, and Havasu is a tourism community. Our economy is based on tourism and the amount of people that come to Lake Havasu and enjoy our space. There's some benefits, right? Because we get bed tax and sales tax and dollars that would otherwise have to be collected from a resident base to use to provide public safety, fire, and police, but also including the stress that takes place on our roads. We have more people on there because we have more people in town, right? So we've enjoyed an influx of tourism. We've enjoyed the ability to collect funds that we can now invest back into the community. Although a quick side note, because it is a frustration that we deal with on every single day basis, is that our costs and our ability to complete these projects is up 25, 30, 40% on some of these things. So when you get bids that come in that we budget for, the cost to do business has gone up. We've increased our collections because we have more people, more tourists in town, but the cost of some of these projects have increased as well. So we have some dollars, and what's the most appropriate, what's the smartest way of spending those dollars and investing back in the community? Well, we hear all the time, right? I think the concerns that we hear mostly at coffees and other public engagements, it's internet needs to improve. Short-term rentals are cumbersome and bothersome, and the city and the state need to do something about that. And fix our roads. Our roads need addressing. So we're listening and we're responding. And $10 million worth of additional investment that we would, on top of what we invest into our roads on an annual basis, which isn't a whole lot if you take a look at it in comparison to everything else, we're going to be investing into Havasu. Right now, our application process that we have as far as the street application process, it's chip seal, right? We all see the chip seal every year. We all complain about the rocks and the chips and those things that happen. It is a very cost-effective and allows us to maintain the roads across the city in the way that we do now. In contrast, I love our friends and up in Kingman, but there is street applications up that they haven't been doing that that have caused really bad situations with their road network, and now they're going to invest a lot more money in fixing it than they would have been in maintaining it. So
to the point they're actually going in front of voters for a tax increase to go just for roads. They're on the general ballot. Again, that's Kingman, not like Havasu.
Yeah, that's Kingman. Yes. Yeah. So we're going to take that investment of that increased tourism dollars we're going to have, and we're going to invest it into our roads, and hopefully we can do it again next year. The expensive part about maintaining the roads and doing something different than we have in the past is our ability to mill, which is basically go down a couple of inches and tear that street out, get it down to the base, and let's start over. And that's a very expensive process, but that large part, that's going to be our investment. the focus for where we're spending the money on the roads is going to be where we see the highest volumes of traffic, and where the infrastructure underneath the road, right? We don't want to put a brand new road down and then dig it up a couple of years because the water main breaks. But where we're comfortable with the condition of the utilities underneath. For the most part, that's going to be from Lake Havasu Avenue up to Acoma, and then in that area. So we're going to be spending a lot of money over in that area on improving our road network and the condition of our roads and the look and feel of our roads.
So I told you we had a lot to talk about today, didn't I? One last big topic, and then we have a couple small things, then we'll turn it over to all of your questions. So short-term rentals, as Jess had mentioned. Let me just go back to roads real quick. I gave credit to Representative Biasucci and Representative Cobb in the House. They started the process, but nothing gets done at the legislature without friends over in the Senate as well. So Senator Borelli was championing it on the other side. So all three of them went to bat for us, and I did give him credit initially. But okay, now going forward to short-term rentals. As Jess mentioned, we get a lot of complaints about short-term rentals, and the city needs to do something about it. And why aren't they doing something about it? So we're not doing something about it because state law says we can't do something about it. So we had, in 2014, we took the lead and we addressed it and had a short-term rental ordinance that we put into place. It worked really fantastic. It brought neighbors together with the owners of property, short-term rental properties, and had that conversation so they could find a way together to peacefully coexist. It worked great. There's other measures as well, but it worked good for 2 years until the state decided that they knew better and they were going to make that be of statewide concern. So the very first words in the bill says cities and towns and counties are preempted from doing anything to regulate short-term rentals. And then it goes on and continues on with a lot of legal language about what that looks like. So we were in a bad spot for a couple of years, and then slowly the state was changing some things. So they, over the years, and it was through the advocacy of citizen engagement to your local elected leaders and us engaging with our state leaders to get some of these changes to occur. But we're able to stop party homes. That most notably was people would go and they'd have birthday parties and weddings and all sorts of social gatherings in these homes, and it would be a huge neighborhood nuisance across the state. So they stopped that they'd have to pay sales tax and or bed taxes. So they corrected that. They couldn't do a variety of other things over the years. Never enough, though, for us to be able to achieve what we needed to for our neighborhoods. So locally, we did do a couple of things that we could. So, the boom, boom, boom you hear on noise next door to your homes, we addressed that through our noise ordinance. We had a noise ordinance. We took a look at it from a residential perspective and said, how can we monitor not only, I get the scales wrong, the C scale, but also the D scale, which I think is the boom, boom, boom part.
The boom, boom, boom part, that's the bass you hear when music is blasting.
The part that keeps you awake. So we addressed that in 2020, and we made some other changes to our codes that how could we address that and find that peaceful coexistence. We're not trying to get rid of short-term rentals. Short-term rentals have been a thing in Lake Havasu since the 70s when people were coming out to the river. I mean, we're not looking to do any of that kind of stuff. We're just looking to find a way, how do we peacefully coexist within the neighborhoods? So we decided to, over the last 6 years, we were kind of pushing different legislation and none of it would ever go anywhere. And so we decided to take a different approach this year, and we engaged with Senator Borelli and Representative Biasucci. And Representative Biasucci ran a bill for us. At the end of the day, his bill wasn't successful, but it started the conversation, and we got a few pieces that we are really good for us. So a couple of the things that the new bill that just went into effect at the end of September, so just a week ago, allows us to have a local registration process. So you have to actually register locally. There's a process now for that. It's enabling legislation. It allows, none of this is happening in Havasu yet because it just went into effect a week ago. The council will be discussing these things. But what the bill that the state passed allows us to have a local registration process, require notification of the homes in front, back, left and right of the home. So there's a process to engage the neighbors, and a couple of other provisions. I don't know if I missed any of the big ones, Jess, on that?
In terms of the new legislation, and so now we're taking that new legislation and crafting that language as we draft a new chapter for the city ordinance. And that'll be coming before council the first meeting in November. I'm telling you, these agendas are going to be packed full of lots of things that are coming up here very quickly. So the notification process, 24-hour content, what that looks like there. It's creating, right now, if you wanted to register your short-term rental, you're doing it through the state and ADOR, Department of Revenue, and they don't do anything really to enforce that process. It's not what they're set up to do. The new legislation allows cities to incorporate a local registration process, which is great. It sounds fantastic. You need to fill an application. You need to receive a permit to operate your short-term rental, and so that and then allows us to kind of track and get an idea of the numbers and what's happening in the community. This the language within the legislation. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, we got new legislation of short-term rentals. This is great. It's fixed." My head explodes because it's not even close to what we need to do. So great, we have a local registration process that exists, and then they say you can only deny that application or rescind that application, that permit, for like 4 reasons, and the 4 reasons are honestly we'll never reach those. It's sex trafficking and other ridiculousness that's tied to it that's very important, but. It's the boom, boom, boom that we're trying to address. Yeah. It's the noise, it's the trash, it's the fireworks, it's the disrespect for the residents in the neighborhood, and we're getting 1/2 of one step in that direction for us to be able to address some of those things. But we're not. That's positive, right? But there's still a whole lot more to go. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to have conversations at the legislature on. More. Just allow the cities, including Lake Havasu City, to be able to work with our residents, work with our council, collect the facts, reward the short-term rentals that are operating in a responsible way, but address the 1% of the short-term rentals that are causing all of our problems. And we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. So the state allows us to put to do certain things. And then we're on volume 10 in terms of our ability to do everything that the state allows us to do, and so that'll be reflected in the draft and the language that's going to come up in first week of November. But just to end my comments is where you started the comments. State law says cities and towns shall not regulate short-term rentals, and they give you a carve out and a link and do a couple of these things that are tied to it. But for some reason, this industry is protected. Unlike any other industry that's out there right now, and it's causing concerns.
All right, a couple last things. These are just a quick, we'll go through them pretty quick. So underneath the bridge, if any of you have been down in that area, you might have noticed really large cracks in the concrete down there.
In that stage area down there?
Yeah, the stage area underneath. The city owns just literally under the bridge.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. On the left and to the right, or to the north and the south, are owned by private entities. But underneath the London Bridge is going to get all of that concrete pulled out and redone. That's going to be a really crazy project to do down in that area. Just there's not good logistics down there to actually physically get there. But working through all those things, but it's going to happen somewhere in the January 3rd to February 10th timeframe. It's not going to take the entire time, but it's going to happen there because we don't have any events underneath the bridge at that time. So more to come on that, but we will be replacing that. The city's also working with the property owners on either side to address some of the sidewalk issues in their areas.
January, maybe early part of February, that's the time frame that'll take place.
The Veteran Clinic, you might have seen in the news today, on today's News Herald, there's a new Veterans Clinic moving into Lake Havasu City. They're currently here already, just in about a 5,000 square foot facility. They're now going to move over to the corner of Park Avenue and Highway 95, next to the Keller Williams building. It's going to be about 20,000 square feet, and it's going to provide the opportunity as our community and region continues to grow to provide access to services to our veterans. Yesterday, the director had mentioned increased and expansive behavioral health, mental health services, as well as more efficient services to serve our veterans. So we're really excited about that movement. I think the paper identified it was like 3 times larger, but the director told me it's 4 times larger than the current facility. But it's going to be a great addition. They're hoping that will be open in January or February of 2024. This week, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week in Lake Havasu City. So if you've seen the bridge lit red, that is in honor of our firefighters. But really what that is, we also proclaimed the week for that. But beyond all the celebratory and fun sides of it, really what is happening is we're encouraging people to have conversations with their family and create an escape plan within your family and your home. So should a fire event occur in your area, that you all have an understanding of what it is you'll do, who's going to grab the animals, and what door you're going to get out of, and what you're going to do when it comes to that. And also, when you're done with that conversation, you're going to go hit the test button on your fire alarms and make sure they're working, or your CO alarms and make sure they're working, and if not, change those batteries. So that is our push for fire prevention. We have an amazing fire prevention bureau in Lake Havasu City. We start all the way with our youngest citizens, with Gina and her crew going to the schools and teaching about fire safety and what that looks like, what the fire service does for a community, all the way up to business and property inspections to ensure. And then we also help our citizens that can't reach or get on a ladder to check those things. So we have an amazing team that does good work on fire prevention, but please do your part and have that conversation with your families and see what you're going to do should that occur to you. The bridge will also be lit for a variety of other reasons throughout this month. This month is, it's been purple for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence does not have just one person it goes after. It goes after families, and it goes after all walks of life. And we do have great services within our community. Actually, Mary Lou and her team from Haven are here with us this morning. And they're one of the victims advocacy groups here in Lake Havasu City to help with that. Breast cancer awareness, you'll see the bridge lit pink throughout the month. You'll also see this weekend for the IJSBA Jet Ski World Finals, they're having an expo show in the channel, which is a freestyle show. It's amazing if you haven't seen it. It'll be at dusk tomorrow night, and the bridge will be lit red, white, and blue for that. Of course, we have to support our home team, Lake Havasu Fighting Knights. So we'll do purple and gold during the football game on the 14th of October and the 21st. And then we also will be celebrating our first responders, so we'll go blue in October as well. So lots of cool things to go see the bridge. If you haven't seen it lit up yet, I encourage you to do so. If you can't get down there at night, just check out any of the social media feeds, and you'll see some really awesome pictures of the London Bridge. This evening, if you're looking for something to do, it is the first Friday of the month, and First Friday will be happening in our downtown area, and encourage you to go down and enjoy that. I do want to introduce a couple of my colleagues on council. So Councilmember Cameron Moses, welcome. Thank you for being here. Councilmember David Lane, thank you for being here. And Councilmember Nancy Campbell is here as well. We've now got to the part of the program where we're going to answer any questions on anything we covered or anything on your mind. Councilmember Lane is going to be our microphone distributor, so he'll go around and get your questions, and then we'll answer them for you. There are folks that watch this at home, so please just stay on the microphone while Councilmember Lane passes around, then we will answer those questions and get answers to you. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sandy DeMarteau. I'm with your Mojave Community College, and I wanted to bring awareness to you what we've got going this month. This is Havasu Highlights. So each week we highlight a different department within our college. But for community education, which I'm in charge of, October 24th through the 28th, I have several demonstrations going on: ceramics, metalsmithing, oil and acrylic painting. But the best part is I have about 5 or 6 classes that are free to you guys that week only. So I have flyers. I also wanted to let you know that at the end of the month, we have the Pumpkin Festival. So bring all your grandkids, your kids, your great-grandkids out to the Pumpkin Festival. And I wanted to also let you know that fall and winter semester, we have several computer, tablet, smartphone classes. They're 2-day work events. They're $20. They're very reasonable. Come out and do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You could look that on the internet. They said questions. Yeah, it's okay.
I got a couple things to follow up.
Okay.
The water situation for pools. What's happening with that? Number 2, when are they going to start the repaving, redoing the roads on 95?
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for your question. So when it comes to water conservation and what does it look like for pools, that will be part of future discussions on water conservation, if that should be a direction or limit the size, those types of things. We're not to that point now in the national conversation or even the local conversation, but certainly it is on the radar of conversation of what might happen. When it comes to the timing of 95, I'm going to turn that over to Jess because I know you and your team have been working with ADOT on that. It's complex because there's lots of people involved. So
there are lots of people involved. Early on in this process, when the dollars were awarded through primarily Leo Biasucci's efforts in our local delegation, we advocated to gain control of that project so we would have a better say in terms of timing and design and how those dollars would be spent. And honestly, we can do it a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot better than they can. So that said, ADOT is in control of this project. So if everything goes very, very smoothly and they do exactly what they say, which I'm sure is going to happen, that construction would you'd see an actual work taking place in about the April timeframe. Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Cal and Jess.
good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I just was asking a question. Are we still doing street sweeping for storm debris, and what kind of schedule is that? And can you explain when you're going to be up in some of the northern streets in the city? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so one of the great things that we haven't seen in a couple of years is some rain events. So it's actually occurred this year. We had a really robust season for our monsoons. And what that does is obviously does to road debris throughout the community. It takes us about a month or so after a rain event, a large rain event, to clean up all of the streets. And we clean up the streets starting at the most busy or the most used roads, the highest traffic counts, and then we move up into some of the less used residential neighborhoods. So it takes about a month process. We have a contract where we sweep the entire community 2 to 3 times a year based on need and based on storms. So our next street sweep for the entire community is slated for mid-November, currently based on scheduling with that crew. Good news is that we just approved a street sweeper for our Public Works Department. We have had issues with the 3 sweepers we have currently.
The 3 very, very old street sweepers that we have.
Yeah, very old. And there's a sweeper and there's a boomer, or what did you guys call that other thing?
Oh, a boom truck?
Yeah.
I mean a sweeper truck. It's basically built for, it's a large sweeping mechanism on the front. I can't think of it. And it's supposed to be used for parking lots, but we do use it for intersections and other areas.
Yeah, so we are working on that. We've had a lot of those storm events this year, so it just as soon as we might have gotten 3 weeks into our 1 month time frame that it takes to clean the roads, and then another storm comes through, and then another one came through. So it was a little bit compounded this year, but we are looking at ways to address that. One, this piece of equipment that we authorized last council meeting is a good start. This next budget year, I'm hopeful that Justin and his team will bring another one so that we can have those resources for our cities and take care of those roads right away.
Council just approved the purchase of a street sweeper. It's now we'll wait 10 months before it gets delivered. Yeah. So I mean, the short answer there is we contract. We do what we can internally with the old equipment and the staff and resources that we have. We also contract out the 2 to 3 sweeps per year. And that, as the mayor indicated, at mid-November, they're going to come in and start that process where they're going to go from one end of the community to the other, and hopefully it doesn't rain in the meantime. So, I mean, our efforts for Bill Young, who oversees the streets and the street maintenance portion of the services the city provides. Thank you, Bill, and your entire team. It's been a tough one for them with the different storm events and the washes and the rocks that take place. Bill literally describes to me the efforts that his team goes through. They have a technology means and for sure, but one of the things they use to track and how they do the storm cleanup is they have a large map of Havasu on the wall, and they know the areas where they need to clean up, and they're literally taking push bins and they're putting in the different areas to kind of keep track of where they're at and so forth. And then it'll rain, and then they pull that map off the wall and put up a new one and put up push pins, and then they pull that map off the wall and then do that again. So special thanks to Bill Young under the leadership of Greg Frosty and our Public Works Department for doing such a great job, given our resources. I think we're through the storm events. Although about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we did a a citywide sweep throughout the community. It looked great, looked fantastic. It was like right before Thanksgiving, and then the day after Thanksgiving, like literally 3 days after the sweep was completed, we had another storm event. So that's the process, how we do it now. That's the efforts that we do it now. That's the resources we have right now. We're going to be looking at being maybe a little more aggressive, a little more proactive, as long as we get some equipment delivered, much more timely effort moving forward. But there's a plan, yeah.
Good morning. Regarding the 15,000 acre feet approximately that we aren't using of water, is that perishable, or does the city get some type of credit each year for that?
Yeah, no, we do not. That's a great question. So anything we don't use either stays behind the dam to help shore up those reservoirs, or it goes downriver. And so others are using it. So that's where some of the fights are that you hear about water transfers and the city being against those transfers, is because those water investments that we made are for our future. And if other people become reliant on it, use it and do what you need, but you can't become reliant on it to the point that it's going to impact us and what we did. But yeah, great question.
A quick question, couple of quick questions. Did the channel ever get dredged that we talked about? I'm not sure if it did or not. You could answer that. And then second question is on the downtown catalyst. I know it was $1 million was the budget when I went to the Parks.
That was the award. Yeah.
Of the award, and the conversation was that was going to be the maximum budget. They weren't going to spend any more than that, so they already spent $120,000. So basically, you have $880. I mean, you spent $180, so you have $820,000. What are your thoughts about going over that mark or staying right at that, not more than that?
Yes. The dredging I'll take, and then
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Dredging, there's a long, laborious process. I feel like we're just making a bunch of excuses, but I'm just trying to describe the process that we deal with on an ongoing basis, as opposed to clicking our heels. But we should see, we've applied for this, believe it or not, an emergency dredging of the channel. The ability for us to do it in an emergency, and it's taken us a year to be able to get clearance to do this in an emergency situation. And we're hoping we'll actually see some movement on the south side of the channel in December, and this year in a couple months. And then doing something a little bit more throughout the entire channel here, hopefully maybe in the following year. So.
And then when it comes to the Downtown Catalyst, and the award was $1 million. When council first was having the discussion to award the contract for design services and community engagement to Dig Studios, the council had concerns and conversations about the entire project should not exceed $1 million. But that wasn't, there was no consensus of the council. There were council members that said, hey, $1 million is what I have an appetite for. There were other council members that said, let's see what the community engagement is and what the public has to say. And then we can take a look at resources based on what that looks like. So basically $1 million was one area. And so Jess and his team will come forward with a plan of basic what does $1 million get you, or based on all of the conversations and community engagement throughout all of the different groups that we met with, it would cost this much to do this. And so we'll have that conversation at the council level, but there really was no consensus. There were certainly concerns and comments and thoughts about it, but no overall consensus of the will of the council.
There will be options.
Yeah.
In regards to the rentals of homes for boomers, at one time I heard that the state, if you had X amount of complaints at your property, they could charge you X amount of dollars, which was exuberant. Is that still in effect?
Yeah, so
And one more thing, I mean, I could sign a contract with a family. I have no control if they send for 10 more of their family members to come for the next 3 days if I rented the house for a week. And I'm seriously thinking about doing that, knowing that Gwen Stefani's going to be my neighbor. And I'm hoping Blake Shelton does a real cowboy concert over there. So, I could probably get a pretty penny and go where all these snowbirds run away from, up at Yosemite. So I'm wanting to know all the ins and outs of that. And and get rid of those cars in the backyard. I don't care about those. That's my son's problem. Anyway, I would like to know a little bit more about all that.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for your question. So, in current state statute, one of the bills that passed over the last several years was there are some provisions for a portion of your rental proceeds to be taken away at penalty if you violate the state statute. The problem is there is no enforcement arm on that. So they built in penalties, but there's no way for that to occur. So certainly our police department can reach out and cite a homeowner or whatever that might look like. But before it ever gets to the Department of Revenue and the state, that provision is not really a good mechanism. That's why we went back forward for this.
I got great neighbors.
Yeah. So, and then when it comes to you renting out to somebody and you're not really sure what they're going to do, through that, the good neighbor part of this program, notifying neighbors front, back, left, right, that conversation occurs so that they have contact information. And one of the things that we did in 2014 in our ordinance was have a good neighbor brochure. And that good neighbor brochure really outlined what it is to be a good neighbor within that neighborhood. And those provisions have worked across the country in other areas that it limits the noise and the issue and the nuisance to the neighborhoods.
If you want to operate a short-term rental in Havasu, be responsible, which means that you have a system in place that would be similar to like a front desk at a hotel. So if there's a noise complaint that's happening in the room at a hotel, you contact the front desk. If there's a noise complaint that's happening at a short-term rental, you need to have a 24-hour contact where the neighborhood can call. Whether that's yourself as the owner, if that's a property management company that you have to contract with and pay for, then that's your role, that's your responsibility as a short-term rental owner.
Yeah,
So,
for more, we'll be here afterwards and we can get more
talk
specific on
afterwards,
your particular issue.
we can't go back and forth because we can't hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Porch lights. When I first moved here and bought in 2009, I was told like 40 watts was the max you could have on your house. Well, now with all these LEDs in the newer homes, they're lit up all night long with 3 big lights in the front. And so you don't even need street lights on my street anymore.
Perfect.
So what can we do about lights on the houses that burn all night long to where you can't see the stars?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, people have a misconception that Lake Havasu City is a dark skies community. We're not. That doesn't mean we don't value dark skies so that we can enjoy the stars. But we are not an official dark sky community. The reason we do these types of engagements and these conversations is these are new topics that now become part of the conversation. So I'll look at current code and see what that looks like in current practice. And we'll report back next time we see you.
And if I can, anytime that a resident contacts me about a concern that they're having in their neighborhood or with their neighbor, the first thing I'm going to say every single time is, what do they say when you brought a casserole over and asked them to change out the lights? Or be a kind neighbor and reach out to them and ask them what's going on. So casserole, that's like Midwest. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the code and we'll see what that looks like and kind of get a basis. I just don't know enough about it off the top of my head to talk that through.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I have a question. Does the city plan on doing any sidewalks on residential areas, or is that up to the homeowner to do
Yes.
that and pay for that?
Yeah, great question. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of sidewalks within Lake Havasu City. We've had the conversation ongoing for many years. The most recent conversation that really had a lot of community engagement was during the sewer project vote back in the early 2000s. And so at that time to add sewer and curbs was about $50 million throughout the community and that project. At the time, the voters did not want to do that. And so there's not the ability for a homeowner to put a sidewalk on their own property. The reason why is, as one of the citizens mentioned earlier, with the storm drainage, it actually acts as a pinball machine. So if you were to do curb and sidewalk in front of your house and no one else on your street did, it all hits your yard. and the water comes down at such a ferocious speed, and then it will redirect, and it could take out someone's entire house. I mean, the foundation of their house. So please don't do that. If you are sick of shoveling your driveway or your yard back into it after every storm event, go to the city website, and there are some great best practices that you can do that are pretty affordable that will ensure your front yard doesn't float away. Now, when it comes to sidewalks in our strategy, what we've done is we've taken our school sites, so our 6 elementary schools, and high school and middle schools, and we've built sidewalks within that area and have expanded as they've made more sense. So over at, actually Jess and I were at Telesis a year ago, where the students were advocating for an extension on Kiowa for an area that they walk. There's a section on Kiowa, but not on South Palo Verde for connectivity. So we're looking at that because these students leave their school site and have to walk across dirt lots or even some developed lots to connect up to a sidewalk then that takes them to Kiowa to be able to get away from the traffic situation that's occurring right at the site of the school to be then able to be safely able to walk in the shoulder area. So we take it from school sites. So if you go around our schools, you see sidewalks and expanding to an area that then it's safe either for those children to have made it to their home or to be able to get on the roadways without that. But there really is not an appetite to continue streetlights, sidewalks, or curbs within our community, with the exception of using our flood control dollars to ensure that when a storm event does happen, that you can traverse throughout our roads. And so over the years, again, if you've lived here, I'll just say 10 years or more, and a storm event occurred, you had to think your way home. If you were out in that storm event, you would have to really think, what road do I take so I don't float away? And nowadays, there's really only 2 sections left really that haven't been addressed that are on the list to get addressed in the future when it comes to that. So, yeah. All right, so we are, we have a couple more questions. One more question here. We'll take these 2 questions, then we'll wrap up. We have a hard stop just because we're on the air too.
Little less of a question, but more of a comment. I'd like to invite all my neighbors here to take a ride up Cherry Tree Highway, all the way up to the end to see what's being done up there. If you're concerned about water usage, drainage, roads, I think you're in for a surprise if you see the amount of what's being built up there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just a comment to that is in part of our general plan of that growth number we talked about earlier. So,
Is there a change in the?
We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Charlie Harmon. I live in Sienna Villas on the island, and there's a development or a request, I guess, for a zoning change that's coming up front here pretty quickly to change that from the hotel site to I guess a mixed use and a residential and so forth. I'm sure you're aware of it. They had a preliminary meeting, I guess a week and a half ago. Did not go very well. Very many concerns from the homeowners based on the lack of transparency from the developer. This is the 3rd attempt that they have done that, and they've refused to really give any transparency as to what they're going to develop there. Other than vague terms, then when you ask them questions, it changes to something else. We really doubt that they even have a plan. I guess the part of our concerns have to do with, number one, traffic. With only one bridge, the additional traffic that brings. If you go down to stand in front of Chagru's on any Friday or Saturday night or any holiday, or when there's an event at the state park there at the same area, that area is extremely congested. And we're really concerned that with these additional homes going in there, of which they won't tell us really the density, and so we don't know. We know there are some mixed use in there, that it's really going to upset the services and be a bottleneck both for residents, for fire and safety, all of which are not on the bridge or not on the island, and trying to come across the bridge, God forbid if there was a fire or a police situation, that the ability to do that would be outstripped. I'm sure you'll look at all that, but the main concern, I think, was the second bridge. And I've heard everything from it's in the budget to build this year to it won't be built in our lifetime. Could you just elaborate on what's the truth?
Sure. Yeah, so thank you for your question. So when it comes to the island and the increased traffic on the island, again, that's something that we've planned for. So those of us that have lived here a long time and before development was out there, we know what it looked like and what it was used for before that. And now that it's changed, it's just a change. It doesn't mean that our modern London Bridge does not have the ability to control or to take that traffic load, because it does. That's what all of the studies say. Representative Biasucci does want to have a conversation about a second bridge. And so in the budget bills this year, he did get awarded monies for us to do a study and construction documents on what that is. From a planning perspective, the city has secured the right-of-way on the island. We actually own that fee simple for where the bridge would come across. And then we've secured right-of-way on the mainland side. But that's all we have. So if you're going to do that from a mainland side, it'd come about like the Windsor 4 area, just general area. If you were to do that today, that would be really an unused bridge, because it's ridiculous to get over there. You'd have to turn off of the highway, do that crazy S-turn on London Bridge Road to try and then get onto the bridge to go across. And so we would have to have some sort of an interchange off of the highway to bring your connectivity. So we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Tens of millions.
The most recent bridge that's occurring is up in Bullhead City across the Colorado River over by the Anderson Fieldhouse. Clark County, Nevada is doing that. And it's, was it
52, whatever million.
Yeah, $52 million just for a basic bridge like that. So the second bridge, it's a conversation we're having, but not based on necessity, based on the discussion piece that the community has always looked at it. One of the areas I equate to it, I'm not for or against the second bridge. It's our money collectively as citizens. We have to have that community conversation if that's a priority that we want to have going forward. But sometimes we talk about the second bridge in terms of we need a second bridge because we've been talking about it since the 70s. But do we actually need a second bridge? Have you been up in Vancouver, British Columbia, connecting the northern part of the city to the southern part of the city? There's still today, and millions of people live in this area, millions, and use this bridge every day. There's still a 3-lane bridge that goes across, but they use different technologies to change the lanes based on the traffic flows. So when the folks are going to work, the lane goes one way. When they're coming back from work, it goes a different way. It's still a big traffic jam, but we're talking millions of people versus a community of 60,000 people. So we're doing all the right things from a planning perspective, and going forward on a second bridge, have all of the entitlements ready to go should the community conversation gear us in that direction. So we're doing all of the right things. I'm open-minded to whatever it is that needs to happen based on those needs. When it comes to public safety, we have plans in place to ensure fire events, catastrophic events, emergency medical events. We have mobile command centers that we stage over on that area when the bridge has to be closed for some reason, or we have an influx of folks on the island. We have fire boats and we have police boats, and we have codes that are up to date. So public safety, everyone is there. Now, to your zoning question, part of our zoning process is they have community or neighborhood meetings as part of that. That's where they gain feedback and support. If they don't have support, they're going to have a really tough time getting through the public process through planning and zoning and through the city council. So I'm aware of conversations of what they want to do about that land. I don't know any specifics because it hasn't come through the public process yet. They're starting their side with the local neighborhood support. So stay tuned to our Planning and Zoning Commission hearings, which are open to the public, and public testimony is encouraged, and then also to the City Council meeting. But all of your concerns are concerns I've heard Planning and Zoning Commission members and council members ask on other developments or rezoning requests. So stay tuned for that. We'll take offline any additional questions because we are up against the clock now. Thank you so much for joining us. It was so good to see everybody again. I'm sorry we weren't able to get together for the last couple of months. We'll see you the first Friday of November here in this room again. We'll be available to answer any questions afterwards, but thank you for the honor of serving as your mayor. Have a good day. Thank you.